You wake up. Nothing bad happened. No mistake, no argument, no failure. And yet, there's a quiet heaviness in your chest. A sense that you've forgotten something, that you've disappointed someone, that you should be doing more. But no one is upset with you. So why does your body act like you're already at fault? Hold that question, because this guilt didn't start today. It shows up in small moments. You rest on a Sunday afternoon, and instead of relaxing, you feel irresponsible. You say no to a request, and hours later, you replay it, wondering if you were selfish. You receive good news, and somehow your mind whispers, "Don't get too comfortable." This isn't sharp guilt. It's low level, ambient, like emotional background noise. Psychologists sometimes call this trait guilt, a stable tendency to feel guilty more easily and more often than others. But that word doesn't capture the experience, because it's not just a feeling, it becomes identity. You see yourself as the responsible one, the one who keeps the peace, the one who notices tension before anyone else does. In relationships, you apologize first, even when you're not sure what you did. At work, you over-explain, over-deliver, over-function. And internally, your self-talk sounds like this: if they're upset, it might be my fault. If something feels off, I should fix it. If I relax, something will fall apart. Over time, guilt becomes less about behavior and more about existence. You don't feel guilty for something. You feel guilty for taking up space. Here's the part that's confusing. You can't point to a specific wrongdoing, so you assume the problem is you. But what if this guilt isn't evidence of being flawed? What if it's evidence of something you learned very early? There's a concept in developmental psychology called parentification. It happens when a child becomes emotionally responsible for others, comforting a stressed parent, managing household tension, being the mature one. No one may have said it directly, but you learned that stability depended on you. If someone was upset, you scanned the room. If voices rose, you adjusted your tone. If a parent was overwhelmed, you became helpful. Your nervous system absorbed a rule. Other people's emotions are my responsibility. And that rule doesn't disappear just because you grow up. From the outside, this looks like empathy. And it is. But internally, it wires something deeper. Your brain links safety with responsibility, not just your own behavior, but everyone else's emotional state. So when nothing is wrong, your body still checks. And if it doesn't find a clear threat, it sometimes creates one, because hyper-responsibility once kept you safe. This isn't a flaw, it's an adaptation. But adaptations that once protected you can quietly exhaust you. The question becomes, how does this adaptation turn into constant guilt? Let's look at the brain. Guilt involves regions like the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors social errors, and the amygdala, which detects threat. In a child who grows up emotionally responsible, these systems become highly sensitive to social shifts. Imagine your brain as a smoke detector. In some homes, it only goes off when there's actual fire. In yours, it learned to react to steam. Cause: unpredictable emotional environments. Mechanism: the brain increases social threat sensitivity to prevent disconnection or conflict. Result: you feel guilt even when there's no real wrongdoing. Another way to see it, your nervous system built a social alarm system. Its job was to ask, is anyone upset? Did I cause it? Should I fix it? As a child, this constant scanning made sense. But now, as an adult, the system doesn't fully power down. So when you rest, your body interprets stillness as neglect. When you assert a boundary, your brain flags it as potential rejection. When someone else is distant, your mind fills in the gap with self-blame. This isn't conscious choice, it's predictive processing. Your brain is always guessing what will keep you safe. And if guilt once reduced conflict, your brain predicts guilt as useful, even when it isn't. So the real issue isn't that you're too sensitive. It's that your internal alarm was calibrated for a different environment, which leads to a quiet but powerful question. Can you recalibrate it? Not by forcing yourself to stop feeling guilty, but by retraining the system. Here are 5 principles. Each one works because it changes how your brain predicts safety. What to do? When guilt appears, ask, did I violate my values or did someone just feel something? Why it works? This activates the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning part of the brain, which can override automatic threat signals from the amygdala. Real-life example: your friend seems quiet after you cancel plans. Instead of assuming fault, you remind yourself their disappointment doesn't automatically mean wrongdoing. You let the emotion exist without absorbing it. What to do? Wait before apologizing. Give yourself 24 hours. Why it works? Immediate apology reinforces the brain's belief that guilt prevents rejection. Delaying breaks that reinforcement loop. Real-life example: you send a message and worry it sounded harsh. Instead of instantly correcting yourself, you pause. Most of the time, nothing happens. Your brain learns silence does not equal danger. What to do? Intentionally schedule rest and label it as maintenance. Why it works? Chronic guilt around rest is tied to identity. By reframing rest as necessary for long-term functioning, you reduce the brain's association between stillness and threat. Real-life example: you lie down on Sunday. The guilt rises. You tell yourself, rest is how I remain stable, not selfish. Over time, your nervous system updates its prediction. What to do? At the end of the day, note one guilt moment that turned out to be unnecessary. Why it works? The brain learns through evidence. Documenting false alarms weakens the threat pathway. Real-life example: you felt guilty for not replying immediately. Hours later, the other person responds casually. You write it down. Your brain starts to see patterns. What to do? Expose yourself gently to situations where you are not managing others' emotions. Why it works? This is behavioral recalibration. Each experience without catastrophe rewires the prediction model. Real-life example: you let someone handle their own frustration without stepping in. Nothing collapses. Your system updates again. Here's the mental model to remember. You have a social smoke detector. It was installed early. It saved you. But now it's too sensitive. You don't need to rip it out. You just need to adjust the settings. Each time you pause before apologizing, each time you separate feeling from fault, each time you rest without fixing, you're telling your brain there is no fire. Over time, the alarm quiets, not because you forced it, but because you gave it new data. You are not guilty by default. You are not secretly failing. You are someone whose nervous system learned that harmony depended on you. And that's not weakness. It's evidence of how deeply you once cared. Now, you're allowed to care without carrying everyone. You're allowed to exist without pre-apologizing for it. And maybe the next time that quiet heaviness appears, instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" you'll ask something gentler. Is this an old alarm or a real fire? And you'll wait, because sometimes nothing is wrong, and that is safe.